national integration will be difficult to achieve in Nigeria unless issues of corruption, nepotism, and unpatriotism are first addressed. This is the submission of speakers at the National Integration Conference put together by the Kuka Center in Abuja. Tunji Olanikbekun files this report.
It was a gathering of leaders in politics, government, civil society, academia, and the human rights circle. The focus here is to look at the state of the nation and efforts to attain national integration. The theme, Nigeria's elusive search for national integration, explains the mood. Almost 56 years after independence, Nigerians remain divided. Speakers here didn't mince words in highlighting why it's difficult to achieve national integration and what Nigerians must do.
The agitations in the Middle Belt were never attended to. And the Christian community in the Middle Belt said, look, what we are seeing is not the kind of future we want. Northern Nigeria said, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of it. We've not taken care of business up till today. If anything, this country is increasingly in recession. Now we are emotionally, we have our own flags. Emotionally, we have our own armies. Emotionally, we have our own economy, and so on and so forth. So the urgency of national cohesion is a call that we make and we continue to make.
Integration and the democratic institutions that promote unity face many challenges, but I'm confident that with the discourse today and the important decisions that come from it, we have the potential to identify new ways to overcome such barriers.
You cannot do without us when it comes to national integration. In the area of economy, infrastructure, and job creation, we've done phenomenal.
Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives Benjamin Kalu is of the opinion that the country can only reach its maximum capacity through good governance, accountability, and inclusivity.
We must embrace our diverse identities, which are given not by choice, but by divine providence. Like I said, it is essential to respect these identities, recognizing that national integration does not mean erasing our differences, but celebrating them while finding common ground.
We get the right policies in place, go ask Dangote, don't ask him, go to the refinery and do federal character, because you will find that more non-northern people are working for Dangote refinery because it needs the skills. But because the private sector is not working, it's completely destroyed based on our liberal economic policies. The only business is that is politics, and we want to try and manage poverty. We can never have equity in poverty. May we have equity in prosperity.
I encourage Nigerians, please speak out. Please express your anxieties and your fears. Don't assume that because you've elected people, you just go to sleep. No, our business is what encourages and enlivens democracy, is the protest, the voices of ordinary people.
Indeed, it's been a profusion of ideas and recommendations on how to achieve this national cause. The challenge is now to walk the talk. Like many brilliant proposals which ended in the pipeline of ideas, this calls for a deliberate action and political will across national and subnational levels.
Now, to speak more on this, we have in the studios Father Atta Barkindo, the Executive Director, the Kuka Center here in Abuja. And from our off-site studio is Samson Itodo, who is the Executive Director, YIAGA Africa. Gentlemen, very warm welcome to Newsnight. But let me start with Father Atta Barkindo. Why has the national question been so difficult to achieve or attain?
First of all, I really want to thank Bishop Kuka and the Kuka Center and what it stands for. And for the past 18 months, with the support of the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, we implemented a project ahead of the 2023 general elections to engage local communities to call for peace so that we can support some bit of integrity, in the electoral process. And I think that literally most of the things we did were really very successful. But one of the most difficult things we discovered and that emerged significantly out of our engagements is the level of division we have really seen in this country at the local communities. Just take, for example, I was traveling from Jalingo back to Makurdi, and I passed through the Federal University in Wukari in Taraba State. And in front of the gate, you have about 50 signposts, and each of them is talking about TIF Students Union, Idoma Students Union, Igbo Students Union. There is nothing about a national discourse of National Students Union. And I think because a lot of Nigerian citizens have withdrawn their loyalty from the state back into the wombs of their tribes and religions and ethnic groups, simply because the state has failed. So one of the reasons why we have, found it difficult to achieve national integration, I think before and even after the independence, and as most of the speakers have spoken, we have lots of unresolved grievances, conflicts that have remained unresolved, and massive failure by the state and even the political leadership, to provide that sense of direction, the common national identity and the citizenship that we need. And I think most of these grievances must be addressed. The state must be active and alive to its social contract and responsibility to Nigerians. In that way and manner, it is very highly likely that we could resolve some of these issues and unite and integrate Nigeria and build a very strong social cohesion for this country.
Yeah, thanks very much. No better place to, start this discussion by laying everything bare. And let's go to the offside studio where Samson Itodo is. Father Barkindo has said the lack of integration is not making Nigerians to be patriotic. And this, of course, has been a recurring phenomenon in the nation's geopolitics. So why really has it been difficult to achieve the 3 R's as, enunciated by the former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, after the Civil War? Why has it been difficult for the 3 R's to have been achieved? That is reconciliation, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. Samson?
Well, thanks. I think the biggest reason why we have this current state of play is the fact that you've got a political class and a political leadership that has failed the Constitution, that has failed the Nigerian people for several years. And you have a situation where injustice, is deeply entrenched within our political system. You have situations where people run for office, they get into office, they swear by the oath to protect the Constitution and defend the Nigerian people, providing a level playing field for all. But when they come into office, all they care about is advancing primordial and parochial inclinations. And that is problematic in itself. And the point Father Atta, was making about these structural inequities are issues that need to be addressed. We are where we are because you have a constitution, that is deeply, deeply entrenched with a lot of structural inequities. And what are the structural inequities? First, if you look at the structure of the state and also the distribution of power, you can clearly see that there are certain aspects of the country that are disproportionately affected by virtue of the configuration of power. I made a point this morning at the conference that if you take the National Assembly, for instance, especially the House of Reps, why is it that there are some states that have lesser number of, members compared to other states, that when you compare their population, states with lesser number of members in the House of Reps actually have higher population? What about our local government system? We've been struggling for several years to institutionalize our local government system. But what you have is the state governors have captured the local government system and make it difficult, for people to feel and experience governance at the local level. These are some of the issues. You have a system today where we as Nigerians live in mutual suspicion. We don't trust each other due to certain prejudices, due to certain stereotypes. It's so disappointing that at a time when we should be celebrating, that air peace, has broken the jinx, And we've got flights directly from Lagos to London. What was the debate? The debate was the fact that the crew on the Air Peace inaugural flight were wearing the Igbo Isiago. And that was the debate, and a lot of people were criticizing that. And what does that tell you? It tells you that there is depolarization and ethnic fragmentation that needs to be addressed. And it begins with, one, addressing the injustices, ensuring equity, but also distributing power and wealth in such a way that everybody who is part of this entity called Nigeria feels the impact of governance and leadership.
Yes, indeed. I mean, you could hear the soundbite there from Senator Oshiomhole when they said using Dangote as an arrowhead of, you know, a detribalized organization. I'm coming to you, Barkindo. Does Nigeria still need the principles of federal character?
Absolutely. We need the principles, but as I said, and as most of the speakers mentioned, it's not just about the principles or the constitution or the policies, because ultimately principles, policies, constitutions don't implement themselves. You need human beings to do that. So beyond the principles of federal character, I think what we need is a kind of value change in this country. Change of character of the Nigerian citizens themselves. And I think during the conference, somebody actually mentioned that even institutions are founded as a result of the quest for morality. So moral values are the very foundations of institutions. So ultimately, we may require, you know, federal character principles, we may require policies, we may require the constitution, but at the end of the day, we need human beings, Nigerian citizens that have the integrity to help us implement these policies. So at the end of the day, it's about survival, it's about food on the table, whether it is federation, whether it is just the states, whether it is subnational, whether it is local governments. At the end of the day, Nigerians are looking for a political class that can address this daily survival and the daily struggles that they go through. So I think that at the end of the day, Nigeria needs leadership. Leadership that has integrity, leadership that can address, you know, what Nigerians are looking for.
Political class that can address the leadership question in the country. Samson, 64 years after, Nigeria is still talking about potentials. Why?
So it boils down to, one, what is our national purpose? Is there an understanding about our national purpose? Is there an understanding about what is the value of political power if it doesn't advance the cause of justice, if it doesn't lift people out of poverty, and if it doesn't make people secured because they elect to be part of this country called Nigeria? There has to be something that anyone who identifies as a Nigerian citizen benefits. And that is the way, you know, you cultivate, you know, patriotism in a country. So 64 years down the line, I tell you, if you look across the different national integration mechanisms introduced by different administrations that we've seen prior to our return to democratic rule, all you see is a decimation, you know, of those policies. You think about the federal character principle, the creation of states, even, you know, our education system was structured in a way that it advances national unity. But why are we where we are? We are where we are because somewhere, somehow, we actually mixed it with the kind of political leadership, but also the ethics that define how we run the affairs of state. And I give you two issues. One, how come that in Nigeria, in today's Nigeria, you cannot secure a job if you do not have someone or know someone who is in a position of authority? God bless you if you do. And if you don't, you have to pay, you know, to secure a job. These are issues that are in the public domain. How come we have gotten to a point where merit is no longer the driving philosophy of recruitment into the public service? It just tells you the fact that our politicians, have clearly corrupted the entire system. But not just the politicians, because often we always hold them responsible. But we as a people, if you think about the public servants who are in our public institutions, who are running the bureaucracy upon which our governance system thrives, how patriotic, how transparent are they with managing these processes? The second is about we as a people and how we treat each other. And I think it's really critical that if you don't see your brother a person from the north or from the south as a brother and as a Nigerian, but the first identity you see is their ethnic extraction or their geographical identity, then we've got a fundamental problem. We have to come to a point where the identity that we see is the national identity, and that is citizenship. And that point was made strongly at today's conference, that we should relegate and abandon the system where every time we are filling forms, we are asked our state of origin, and your state of origin determines your access, to the dividends of democracy. That needs to change. We need to revisit our sense of social good, and I'm very glad that Bishop Kukah and the Kukah Center is leading this charge. And I hope that the state would also support this effort, because it will help, promote a sense of nationalism that Nigeria needs to actually make progress. If people don't feel that Nigeria exists to serve the interest of the common man, then there will be de-alignment and retreat from defending our national values.
Yes, indeed. I mean, a progressive line of thoughts there. Let me come to you again, Father Barkindo. Hasn't religion played a role in stunting Nigeria's development?
Not entirely. I think that I'm a product of religion, my education and everything. I owe it to the Catholic, missionaries. And I think that religion has made immense contributions really to the growth and the development of this country. From education to health to training to leadership provision. I mean, most of the political elite in this country, in many aspects went through missionary schools on all sides of. But I understand the agitations that people have, regarding the misinterpretation and misrepresentation, somehow even the exploitation of religion that we see and is bringing about some of the conflicts that we see around. But I think two of the speakers at the conference today made very important points that Samson even made reference to. Gloria Balasin made the point that, the Muslims have the Quran, Christians have the Bible, Nigerian citizens should have the Constitution. And therefore, we should all be united under one Constitution, and the Constitution should be superior. And I think that this is very fundamental, because the values of the Constitution themselves emerge from the values of religion. And finally, Adams Oshomole, the senator, was really very, point blank when he said, at the end of the day, I think the private sector is very, very strong in terms of helping this country to grow. And most of the private sector and those who are engaged in the private sector also went through some religious schools and religious institutions that have supported them to set up their businesses and carry out some of the things that they are doing today. So I think that on the positive side, religion has really contributed to the growth of this country. But of course, we must also admit that there are people and different adherents of religions in this country that sometimes exploit, abuse, and manipulate religion to bring about some of the crises that we are having. But I think above all, religion has made significant contribution to the growth of Nigeria.
Well, Samson, I don't know if you want to share that view, if religion has played a role in Nigeria's, stunting Nigeria's growth. But What key cohesive moves should the people take on for a new orientation of the mind for growth and development?
I think first, you know, Bob Marley said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. I think the biggest war we need to fight is the war of the mind. We've got to change people's mindset and people's attitude towards Nigeria. And it begins with how we view the next person. If someone does not belong to your religion or comes from your tribe, does that mean that individual does not have dignity? Does that mean that individual is not human? Does that make that individual less human than yourself? I think we need to change our mindset as Nigerians and see each other as human beings created by God who have rights, because the dignity of the human person needs to be upheld and respected at all times. And if we do so, then we would not have the kinds of killings we see. We would not have the kinds of hate speeches, the kind of segregation and discrimination that has taken and gained currency in our both private and our public life. Secondly, it's about, you know, respect, because the principle of mutual respect is critical. The fact that I'm Christian does not mean I shouldn't respect, you know, the idiosyncrasies, the religious convictions of another individual. And this is important because if you want peace, you've got to respect people's religion and their tenets and their values. And there is no need to engage in this religious dominance or struggle for supremacy that you see in different parts of our national life. The third point is that the state has a responsibility, you know, to continue to promote values and ethics, both in our education system, in our social life, but more importantly, in the way the state is run. You can't talk about national integration and national unity when all your appointees from end to end represent a particular ethnic group, perhaps the ethnic group that you come from or your religion, the religion that you represent. That is not national integration. And so when you are in a position of authority or you actually an employer of labor, think about diversity, because like the Deputy Speaker made, and he was quite profound today, when he said, you see, our strength lies in our diversity isn't a cliche. It's actually a strong statement that as a country, if we build consensus, if we work together, if we cooperate and unite, there is no way we won't solve the problems that bedevil us as a country. And I just want to make the point about bipartisanship, especially to our political class. It's sad that across different political divides, there isn't consensus about what Nigeria stands for and then what our future should look like. Other countries make progress because regardless of political divides, they build consensus around issues. And those are issues that are central to national development. Until our political class, regardless of political party, regardless of political ideology, build consensus around fundamental issues like ethics and values and national identity, there is limited progress we will make.
Yeah, limited progress indeed we are making. Gentlemen, I want to thank you most fervently for coming to shed light on the national integration question in Nigeria. Here with me, right in the studio, Father Atta Barkindo, is Executive Director of the Kuka Center, and of course, Samson Itodo, Executive Director, YIAGA Africa. Thank you.